Brought to you by ProGuides. Join for free at proguides.com/penniless. My original plan for this opening bit was to discuss the end results of the second Rastakhan nerf, particularly the one done to equality. Given how I loudly proclaimed that equality would see play in my last video, I was expecting this section to either be me going, well, this is a sad day for me, my friends. I was wrong and the raging hive mind of Hearthstone was correct. Equality is dead forever. Or I would be going, woohoo! I was right, motherfuckers! Get on my level, you brain-dead Neanderthals! Penniless called it! Penniless motherfucking called it! Instead, the results were kinda middling? Turns out that the few remaining even paladins were able to replace Pyromancer and Equality. The OTK decks are still running it, but those same OTK decks also aren't good enough anymore. But whatever, we only have a little bit of time for the greatest meta shifter in the history of this game, so I'll keep my confetti on reserve in case Travala makes a comeback. Greetings and welcome to Hearthstone Theory. Today we'll be talking about a concept that many players have been thinking about for a while, the class of Hunter in Rastakhan's Rumble. At the time of this video, the class's status at the top has faded somewhat thanks to two particular card nerfs, the ones to Hunter's Mark and Lesser Emerald Spellstone. But before those changes, this class was easily the strongest class in the game, and even after these nerfs they're hovering at a respectable second place. Thanks a lot, Odd Paladin. I've been playing this theory for months and you just can't get off your throne long enough for someone else to take it. However, base win rate is not the only element at play here. One of the most popular decks in the current meta is mid-range Beast Hunter, which is being labeled tier 1 consistently by Tempo Storm. Plus, it is worth considering before these nerfs when Hunter was clearly on top. The amount of frustration directed towards this class during that time was practically palpable. How did Hunter get there? What's the difference between the dominance of Hunter then and the dominance of Hunter now? Today we'll explore those ideas, and come to understand why Hunter reigns supreme. As always, press these buttons if you feel so inclined. They're the good buttons that make me more successful as a YouTuber. Now, last episode, I compared people who pressed the dislike button to people who talked in movie theaters, and a few of you in the comments section had a problem with that. Now, as much as I would love to compose a 500-word essay describing how these two sets of people are equivalent, these commenters do have good points. Dislikes are an important part of the YouTube algorithm, and if you're incentivized to push that button, I shouldn't discourage you. It's not like I painstakingly examine the stats of each of my videos, and upon looking at a fresh video and seeing a single dislike I begin panicking, wondering how I failed to get that person's appreciation, then continuing to stress about the overall outlook of my channel and portrayal of my personality, terrified that perhaps I'm not as talented as I think I am, and that eventually my audience and all who I hold dear will abandon me to a life of loneliness and misery that will only ever end with the sweet release of death? Oh shoot, has my anxiety manifested into imposter syndrome? I'll worry about that later. Right now, let's begin. The rise of Hunter can be traced all the way back to Journey to Ungoro, which is notably the oldest expansion still in the standard set. Before this time, Hunters weren't doing quite as well, having lost their Smork status after the Year of the Kraken nerfs, and then getting 2 expansions and an adventure of pretty much nothing. Gadget Sand, for example, gave them hand buffing, which was obviously a super strong effect that would see regular play forevermore. After that, you'd think that Ungoro would have given Hunters some lifelines. Instead, they got the Marsh Queen. Exceptional failures aside, they did manage to get some beasts to assist them, though none were as strong as the Face Hunter days of yore. Meanwhile, they also got Terrascale Stalker, a decent card that saw 0 play, and Devilsaur Egg, which also didn't manage. Viewers familiar with today's Hunter can probably see the seeds that were planted here, but it doesn't stop with Ungoro. With the arrival of Frozen Throne, Hunters once again got a strong beast to play with, as well as a few combo cards that didn't seem quite worth building a deck with. There's also one other important card they got with that expansion, but we'll get back to that one. Then comes Kobolds and Catacombs, which continue to give Hunter a combination of strong cards it could use, strong cards it couldn't use, and strong cards that people thought Hunter couldn't use, but they could. This finally culminated in Witchwood and Boomsday giving Hunters dragons and mechs, along with a few more pieces that didn't suck. Though to be fair, I do think Mech Hunter is underrated, but that's just me. Hopefully you're all following the point I'm trying to make here. All of the current standard expansions have been propping up many different variants of Hunter, from Death Rattle to Recruit to Dragons to Secret to Combo. It's worth knowing that every class has this happen to them to some extent. However, I'd argue that Hunters were made particularly diverse. The vast majority of the cards the class received were only powerful in select circumstances, and even their strongest and plainest cards only became truly powerful thanks to niche synergies. with one exception. Have I mentioned how much I hate this card? Most players and designers would praise this situation. It's good that there's diversity, that leads to more decks. However, for the course of this build-up, Hunter didn't exactly have that benefit. Katharina, strong as she is, saw little play in Kobolds and Witchwood. Mid-range Beast Hunter likewise had little ground to stand on. Mech Hunter died out quickly, and Dragon Hunter died before it even began. The class's varied tactics were all intriguing, but no more than one or two at a time ever had enough ground to stand on. This status quo of lots of archetypes, little power remained true for most of the Year of the Mammoth and the start of the Year of the Raven. But that's the thing about giving a class many varied pieces. Eventually, Blizzard can decide to give that class the correct pieces that allow the multiple decks to come together. And with the Year of the Raven's general theme being variety is the spice of life, those pieces Hunter found, particularly with its Death Rattle archetype. Witchwood gave the class Houndmaster Shaw, Witchwood Grizzly, and Mossy Horror, and Boomsday gave it Spider Bomb, allowing the deck to finally come into its own. A similar story occurred with Subject 9, thanks to synergy with Emerald Spellstone and Hunter's desperate need for card draw of any form. These additions let Hunter stay on par with other decks throughout Boomsday, which only continued going into Rastakhan. With Springpaw allowing the class to remember that overpowered hyena it used to use all the time, alongside Master Call being the best card draw the class has ever had, suddenly several of these very decks were kicking harder than ever. But at least there were a lot of other decks of equal power. Never mind. Rastakhan's first balance patch allowed Hunter to dominate the field, with 4 different decks seeing various amounts of play. Each had advantages and disadvantages, but all capitalized on a mid-range approach. Death Rattle and Beast focused more on combos and synergies, Spell had pure value backing it up, and Secret mixed and matched elements of both Beast and Spell. That last deck emerged as the best of these archetypes, while the rest still did better than all other classes. But why was this class a cut above all the other classes? To answer that, let's look at the core cards that all of these decks used. Altogether, there are 3 cards from the basic set and 3 cards from expansions that serve as Hunter's core right now. Let's start with the basic: Animal Companion, Kill Command, and Tracking. Anyone who has touched this game in the last ever should recognize these 3 cards, them being consistent examples of Hunter's power. Strong tempo and aggression that provides beast synergies, painfully powerful aggro if you have those beast synergies, and tracking. To be honest, tracking deviates a little bit from the rest of this theory, so let's just accept that it's strong and shelve it for now. It's probably worth talking about that card in its own quick take. Someday. Back to our other 2 cards, this is usually the part where I go, clearly this power is a very bad thing, and I condemn the lack of balance, but recently my viewpoint has changed somewhat. In my video discussing the equality nerf, one particular commenter made some counter-arguments that I actually appreciated. The main one is this: certain cards in the basic set should strongly reflect the class's identity, to keep the class consistent. This is exactly what's occurring with these 2 cards. While powerful, they're unequivocally representative of Hunter. Frankly, every class has cards of this nature. Though, I suppose it's worth noting that these cards represent everything everyone hated about Face Hunter. But details. Now, those 3 aside, Hunter has received other cards that provide decent strength. Flanking Strike, Candle Shot, and Springpaw being the main ones. Once again, this isn't incredibly unusual. Every class gets powerful cards from expansion to expansion. But there's one final card that completes Hunter's game plan: Deathstalker Rexar. The thing about this card is that it's the ultimate contingency plan. If a control deck is able to outsmart the Hunter's combos, or an aggro deck gets a wide board on them, Deathstalker clears opposing minions and grants its user unlimited cards over time. This piece, like other defensive pieces, is able to round out the decks it's in by giving its user a chance in an otherwise unwinnable situation. I've said it before, but this card is the strongest of the hero cards we've been given, well, ever. Side note, the fact that Hunter also has Zul'jin as a resource isn't irrelevant, it's just not as relevant as you might think. Now we have a full picture. Hunter has strong core cards, some of which work to its game plan and others that serve as security in case that plan goes awry. These serve as a backbone to various synergies that, after 2 years of development, finally have the support they need. This had Hunters on top right after the December Rastakhan nerfs, allowing them to dominate the game quite thoroughly. But then, some more nerfs happened, and everything changed. Before the February nerfs, Hunter had 4 decks in the meta. Now there are 2, and rival decks are now cropping up that can deal with these 2 fairly easily. These nerfs didn't seem hugely significant. Hunter's Mark still sees play, and Emerald Spellstone wasn't used in mid-range nor Death Rattle. Secret Hunter was certainly the strongest of the hunters, so snuffing the spellstone was all well and good, but Hunter's Mark nerf was relatively slight. Surely it wouldn't be enough. It was enough. Hunter's Mark is used not as a core part of the hunter strategy, but instead as a contingency, much like Deathstalker. We said before that Hunter has been built as the perfect mid-range class, meaning that it does its best to efficiently win the first several turns. The main weakness to this approach is that if a minion is placed early that the hunter can't beat, then they lose. That's where Hunter's Mark usually comes in. This card alongside Candle Shot can instantly eliminate almost every minion, and thus it became a very powerful way to destroy large cheated out opposition. So Blizzard upped the cost of this contingency alongside Emerald Spellstone. Hunter's Mark is still a perfectly good card and still helps Hunter beat decks like Evenlock, but its higher cost leaves the class exposed to other opponents. Faster decks. Before, Hunter's Mark was worth spending on a strong 3-mana card. Now, not so much. Aggressive decks like Odd Paladin and Odd Mage were able to take advantage of Hunter's perfect mid-range strategy because, well, rock, paper, scissors. Aggro beats mid-range. It's worth noting that Secret Hunter has tools at its disposal that could counter these aggressive decks, at least partially, which makes the nerf to that deck all the more appropriate. Wow, it's almost like Blizzard plans out these nerfs with care and consideration, doing their best to engineer a balanced game with multiple fair decks. Who would have thought? Now that it's post-nerfs, Hunter still has the strongest mid-range deck in the game, but they aren't dominating anymore. Between the various aggro decks, the various control decks, the new flavors of mid-range that implement tools from other classes, and all this breathing room allowing for previously oppressed combinations to come out of hiding, now Hunter has a lot more contenders. A few weeks ago, I critiqued the Rastakhan meta for not having enough diversity. I'm happy to say that these nerfs changed that. And so, that's the full story of the rise and sorta fall of Hunter. They've been prevailing thanks to all the reasons I detailed, various strategies becoming fully fledged, a strong core, Deathstalker Rexar being the perfect contingency, etc. For the briefest time after some other decks were cut down, they shined a little too bright, but thanks to Blizzard, it's a diverse meta once again, with aggro being a reasonable tool for beating the beast users down. You know, it's ironic. A class once infamous for being too fast and too face-focused is now defeated by the same strategy. Bravo, Blizzard! Bravo! Alright, now you know the hows and whys of Hunter's rise to the top, but maybe you instead want to learn how to climb and become better with these Hunter decks, or any other deck in the game. If you want more help on that path, I strongly recommend this episode's sponsor, ProGuides. ProGuides has a plethora of lessons for several different games: League of Legends, Fortnite, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and most importantly for us, Hearthstone. As experienced a player as I am, there are several aspects of this game that I constantly mess up at, and lessons on ProGuides have made this more obvious than ever. For example, pro players patiently plan perfect plays before using a single card, while I instead do certain moves too quickly that I immediately regret. There have been so many missed lethals. But ProGuides' course on getting to Legend, which only takes 15 minutes of time to complete, enforces this concept of careful calculation, as well as other subtle ideas for advancing on the ladder. And this is just one of the courses available to the site's visitors. There are plenty more to explore. Visit ProGuides.com/penniless to check out the various lessons for yourself. Try it for free today, or go pro to get full access to all the courses the site has to offer. Once again, that's ProGuides.com/penniless to access these lessons to improve your Hearthstone gaming skill. Check them out, thank you all, and I'll see you guys next time.